Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and returning to the show, Matty F. Brown, who works on Seahawks On Tape, and your second appearance on the show. And Matty, I got to tell you, man, you were a fan favorite the first time you came on to preview Vikings and Seahawks last year, which turned out to be one of the most entertaining games, I think, of the entire NFL season. Certainly for the Minnesota Vikings, did not end the way that Seahawks fans would have wanted, but that was back and forth, really fun ending. Sam Darnold makes an incredible pass to win the game, and now he will be throwing passes in Seattle. It's been a crazy offseason for the Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll ends up as the Raiders head coach, which I never saw coming that he would be a head coach again. Geno Smith is traded. Sam Darnold is the quarterback. DK Metcalf is a Pittsburgh Steeler. What is going on, man? This must have been kind of entertaining for you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so much has happened. I think I was probably popular from the first appearance because I think I predicted a Vikings win, although maybe a bigger victory than what transpired. And clearly, John Schneider, as he has done with quarterbacks before, like Sam Howell, was impressed with what Sam Darnold was able to do in Seattle and that massive throw over the head of Reek Woolen and outside of Julian Love for the ceiling touchdown, which very impressive throw. And yeah, it's like a very different looking team suddenly. I think, not to speak for an entire fan base, but we may have touched on this last year as well. That there was kind of a sense around the team that they, Schneider's always insistent that they never rebuild and they're always competing and then they're never kind of blowing it up. And I don't think they've totally blown things up. However, the roster's suddenly looking a bit younger. They've made a fair few draft picks, and they've got a quarterback who in Darnold who, hey, if it doesn't work out, there's an easy out there. And they actually drafted a quarterback in Jalen Milroe for the first time in a while. Like, I think Alex Magoo was their last draft pick. Remember him? Probably not.
Oh, of course I do. He's Alex Magoo, UFL legend.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and he could sling it, but not in the way that Darnold slung it last season. And it's quite a funny coincidence, I guess, that I'm on a Vikings podcast with yourself, Vikings expert, and I'm sure I don't know how likely to tread around the Darnold topic, because on the one hand I can see the positives to it, but I am a bit disappointed in how it played out in terms of Geno Smith this season. Obviously, listeners will know that I was a big advocate of his game.
Well, feel free to ask questions. This is it's a two-way podcast, not just a Q&A, so you can throw Sam Darnold questions my way, but why don't we begin with, because these two teams play each other, and this is part of my series, just looking at teams that the Vikings are going to play, their off seasons and so forth. And Vikings fans are very familiar with how much Sam Darnold can sling it because he threw the heck out of the ball last year, and they get to the end of the season, the offense melts down in back-to-back games. It leaves a sour taste in everybody's mouth, and of course made the decision much easier for the Vikings to move on from Sam Darnold. So having seen that entire picture and knowing that there is differences between the supporting casts, I like Smith Najigba. He's not Justin Jefferson. And I think the jury is still out on the offensive system versus what we've seen from KOC, which has been really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
How are you setting expectations for Sam Darnold in Seattle?
Well, I really think people, not that there's ever too much patience around the quarterback position, but I think, yeah, the context of what he's coming into is absolutely valid. And, we should always be talking about context when it comes to quarterback play and the system that he came from. Obviously, I think, Kevin O'Connell, I think, is the best play caller in the league. He's certainly up there. Last season, I think he definitely was. Obviously, maybe he recognised he could have done some things a bit better in the postseason and that crucial Week 18 game. But as a whole, it was mightily impressive what he's able to do. And I think, again, to reference that time I came on last season, I was sort of marveling at how balanced O'Connell's offense was, and it was such a contrast to what the Seahawks were running and how poor that offense was. But anyway, they've now got rid of Ryan Grubb. He was a one-season wonder, and they've gone for a guy who Mike McDonald's handpicked. It's obviously his first full off-season in Seattle, in Clint Kubiak, to run the Shanahan, or maybe it's just the Kubiak system, given his dad kind of did it first. And so That's exciting for a sense because it's some like training wheels. It should build better balance into this offense. I mean, it should enable. I mean, the massive talk in Seattle is the offensive line, and the offensive line in previous. I mean, just go to last season. They were per PFF. They were 30th in rush yards before contact per carry. They were 29th in pressure rate allowed. And they spent the 29th least on their offensive line. The types of pressures they were giving up, they weren't really on the quarterback. In fact, Gino, if you look at like Football Insights did, if you look at like pressures attributed to the quarterback, Gino was the 5th best quarterback in that stat. But then if you look at like quick pressures, where I mean, quarterback maybe could do something about that in terms of setting protection, but I think the stat assumes that they're not responsible for that. The Seahawks were like the worst in the league each year from since Gino became the starter in Seattle, and it was just atrocious. And offensive line wise, hey, guess what? Sam Darnold's going to be playing behind kind of the same figures. The Seahawks did spend the first round pick on offensive lineman, which is very rare under John Schneider, and honestly, it's not a guy who screams Schneider. Like he has shorter arms in Gray Zabel, and he is not. Usually he's gone for that mauling type. Obviously, with Kubiak coming in, transitioning to more of a wide zone system, they maybe their profile slightly changed, but it didn't scream Schneider, and it did feel like, hey, we're drafting. We know we have a need here. We didn't do much in free agency, so they've got a new left guard, but it's a rookie. You've got Abraham Lucas, who wasn't able to play last season, but arguably like his best football, he's been the best offensive tackle in Seattle on the right side. But yeah, there's a lot of pieces on the offensive line where they don't know who's going to be the center yet, and it's kind of an unproven second year Olu Oluwatimi or they might swing a guard in there like Christian Haynes, who was disappointing in his rookie year last year. But I do generally believe that the offensive line, Kubiak bringing in his longtime offensive line coach, John Benton, 17-year coach, from the mess of last season, where it was just one of the worst NFL offensive systems I've seen. And I like to give Grubb the benefit of the doubt. It's a tough transition coming from college, but it was bad. This is going to be probably the most we've seen a team transition from in their run rate. They're going to run the ball so much more often. So they'll be more balanced in terms of their run-pass splits, which helps the offensive line. And I think formationally, they're going to be more balanced, and they're more balanced in their pass protection schemes. And that just helps the offensive line pass protect, along with some upgrade in the talent. That said, I still do worry about Darnold coming into that kind of area, and he did a lot last year to alleviate that, right? Like, I mean, I'd love to know your opinions. I've spoken for way too long on this, but it's a big topic around the Seahawks. I'd love to know your opinions about him handling pressure, because I know there's some promising figures, and I know he was able to navigate pockets quite well and showed some play extension and some more maturity in checking the ball down and stuff than he maybe had earlier in his career. So do you think that's going to stick after year one? Or
folks, for weeks now, I've been using Tempo meals to cut down on the amount of times that I go out for fast food. And as you guys know, for me, that is quite an accomplishment, but it's worked. I feel like I'm in better shape and big time saving a lot of money from going out to eat constantly. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. I do nothing and they show up. Their perfectly portioned lunches and dinners take the guesswork out of eating. They are well prepared. They're easily heated up in the microwave in just 3 minutes. I'll tell you, some of my favorites: barbecue chicken, Tuscan butter shrimp, fantastic. Korean beef quesadilla, all this stuff is great. And those are my preferences, but there are dozens and dozens of options to fit whatever you like for your diet. It takes about 5 clicks to order. So for a limited time, Tempo is offering my listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/Purple Insider. That is tempomeals.com/Purple Insider. 60% off for your first box. Again, tempomeals.com/Purple Insider. Rules and restrictions apply. This episode is brought to you by Denisa Tova and her team at TOVA QDRO and Retirement Valuators. This message is specifically for the divorce lawyers out there who listen to the show, and I know you're out there. It can be a huge challenge to help people split up their stuff, including retirement accounts. That's where Denisa and her team come in. Most of the legal language when it comes to 401ks and IRAs is stuck back when they had single bar helmets and barefoot kickers. So let Denisa help you get up to speed with the Settlement Language Lab. It's like a training camp for your law firm, a quick and easy set of drills to help you avoid losing money for your clients. No sales pitch, just answers. So if you want in, go to LinkedIn and search Denisa Tova, that's DENISA TOVA, and message her or click on the Schedule the Settlement Lab button and let her know that you heard of her through Purple Insider. Also, check out her podcast, Beyond the Bar. I have been a guest, by the way, and listen to the interviews with lawyers, judges, and celebrities. With Denisa, it's lawyers only, no fluff, no gimmicks, just real help. All right. Back to the show. Right. It's kind of funny because when you look at all of the numbers and how he performed right in front of me under pressure, last year in the regular season through 17 weeks, he was one of the best in the NFL at dealing with pressure. The play he makes in Seattle is unbelievable. I mean, stepping up in the pocket, the throw that he had against Atlanta when they sent free rushers at him and he scrambles around, finds Justin Jefferson for a touchdown. And toward the second half of the season, as the offensive line was starting to collapse with Cam Robinson in there at left tackle rather than Christian Darrisaw, he still was, it seemed to me, developing the ability to find guys underneath. There was a game against Chicago where something happened to his hand. We never got an explanation what it was, but he was inaccurate in that game down the field. So they started going underneath and he actually was doing it. And I still think he was always looking for that big shot so much more, but he was ducking it down to Aaron Jones from time to time. He was starting to work TJ Hawkinson in a different game against Chicago where he threw to Hawkinson a ton. So it wasn't all just, hey, I'm going to scramble around and throw some bombs. I thought he did develop and mature as the season went along. But at the end of the day, when you look at the sack numbers and you look at the number of times where this is always a tough balance, right? Like if you're going to be the guy who scrambles around and makes plays, it's also going to result in you running backwards for a 15-yard sack. And there were way too many times where his first instinct when he got pressure up the middle was to turn around and run backwards. And so there were times where he's like running toward his own end zone, getting tackled from behind by somebody and losing huge yardage. And I saw a chart that somebody put out there that was showing that I think Josh Allen had more EPA on runs or something than lost on sacks or something crazy about Josh Allen. But Sam Darnold had lost a lot of EPA on sacks overall and really wasn't a running quarterback. So he didn't make that up with his actual rushing yards. He could just scramble enough for a first down. But when I looked at that signing, I thought first thing I did was I went to Seahawks depth chart and I went to offensive line and went, I don't know, man, because for at least half of the season, the Vikings had a legitimate, I think, top 5 to 7 line when Christian Darrisaw was in there, but he goes out and then there's a trickle down effect from that. And it became overwhelming eventually by the end of the season, especially when the Rams realized some of their weaknesses. It was actually Arizona that recognized the weakness of Sam Darnold identifying rushers from the second level. So this is something when Seahawks play Jonathan Gannon, I'll be really interested in, because I think he realized if you send delay blitzes from linebackers or safeties where they don't necessarily show it right away, but then they're coming, Darnold kind of overlooks that and was not really great at resetting. And some of that I'm sure is offensive line too. But I think he's going to need a good center to guide him, and you don't even know who's playing center. And the other part too, that doesn't really match up for me with Darnold in Seattle is, all right, so you've got Smith-Njigba who can go downfield, but I think of as a really, really good possession receiver. And Cooper Kupp, we'll see if he stays healthy, but he's kind of the ultimate possession receiver type guy. I don't even know who's playing tight end. Who's playing tight end? Is there a tight end?
Well, that's a hotly contested position right now. There's Noah Fant, there's AJ Barner who's in his second year, and then there's some options like they drafted Elijah Arroyo. I don't know how much he's going to play in his first year because he's coming off a knee injury. But like the main two would be Barner and Fant. Barner's more your inline type. Fant's your move guy. Fant's earned quite a lot of money and probably underperformed that. Came over in the Russell Wilson trade, but
Right.
it's
So
not Hawkinson.
right. You're not talking about and even then I thought at times he kind of overlooked Hawkinson, but Hawkinson was missing for the first half of the season with the ACL. So the point is, I see Marquez Valdez Scantling on the list. There's a deep wide receiver who may or may not catch the football when it's thrown to him. This is going to be very different because he had two of the best downfield wide receivers, two of the best intermediate and deep route runners that you're going to find in the entire NFL. And now you're talking about a lot of timing stuff, underneath stuff, hitting guys on the break. I don't know that matches up perfectly. So but here's where I would say the silver lining is, having seen Clint Kubiak here with the Vikings. His big issue was really the second halves of games where teams would kind of figure some things out and then they couldn't like have a counter punch, but maybe he's progressed since then as a play caller. But you are going to work off of the run with a lot of play action. There's going to be bootlegs in there, which Darnold is terrific at getting on the move, seeing guys downfield. And if he can work off of those bootlegs, which kind of naturally get guys open, and all he has to do is throw an accurate pass, he's as accurate and as strong of a thrower as exists in the entire NFL. So I actually think for the play caller you got, it should work out really well. For the offensive line and receivers, I don't know that it really matches up.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to come on to the receivers because that's the big thing, isn't it? Like, Kubiak was so good at like with the Saints before everyone seemed to get hurt like constantly throughout the year. But with the Saints, he seemed very good at getting like, hey, it was maybe like a wide receiver 5 type guy, but he'd scheme up ways to get them the ball down the field and get explosives, and he'd have a good package of plays for that guy's skill set, like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, right? Who also got hurt. That's kind of been his issue as well. But like receiver skill set wise, it's, you know, they trade DK Metcalf, right? Valdez-Scantling's like the DK Metcalf light. He's going to play in the X role. He's going to be the burner, the field stretcher. He still has a good play speed. But then it's like Cooper Kupp, JSN, as you said, those are underneath targets. I mean, I was listening to Darnold with he was on with Nate Tice of Yahoo or however I'd say it.
Yahoo here.
Yes, it is. And he said that throwing choice routes to Christian McCaffrey was like one of his favorite things to do in San Francisco. And obviously in Seattle, like those kind of slot option routes to Cooper Kupp, which it was his bread and butter, right? Like, you know, I'm so interested to see how it all fits in. But ultimately what we're saying is receiver, there's some pretty big question marks there and maybe a talent deficiency. And I love JSN and he's an ascending player and he has elite potential and he can play some outside, some inside, some Z and some slot. Kupp is more of a slot. And then the X guy, who knows, but they're probably going to run a lot of 2 tight end and one tight end, two in the backfield type stuff because it's Kubiak. But that's a question mark. The offensive line's still a question mark, even if they're going to improve with the play caller. Like the right tackle, Lucas, his health is a big question. Guard is like, oh my goodness, like this could be really bad, or they could get lucky. Center as well. The interior is just, oh my gosh, it's scary. And then there's Darnold himself, who like we just don't know. And I think aesthetically, like some of the running backward stuff, it just looks weird. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a mistake. And a lot of the time early in the season, when he's like scrambling out the pocket and picking up a first down, you're like, whoa, that was really good. Like, where's that been? But like his time to throw in the season, I think is like 3.66 seconds. Like he's holding the ball. Some of that's from creating as well, and that part. But then some of it is the running backwards, getting sacked. And I couldn't believe how simple the Rams' defensive game plan was. Like when I saw, because I didn't watch it live because I went to bed. But then I checked the box score and was like, wait, what? There's no way that something weird didn't happen here. And it was just like the Rams, like how brash they were in just playing so much cover one and like you said, blitzing from the second level. It wasn't the fanciest stuff at all. So how were they not able to get, Justin Jefferson the ball more in those one-on-one situations and do more? And so there's a lot riding on the offense. Like even Kubiak himself is relatively unproven as a coordinator. Like, it was real flashes with New Orleans, but you know, I mean, in Seattle, we've seen if you try and get a certain system, like they tried to get a McVay system with Andy Dickerson, and it didn't pan out. Like just having an offensive coordinator for more than a year would be a positive. Like they fired Grubb in a year, and Shane Waldron didn't last much longer. Like it's. I meant Shane Waldron. His offensive line coach was Andy Dickerson when they're trying the McVay thing. But anyway, yeah. Too many offensive coordinators to keep track of, and I am excited, but like I said, just that context for Darnold, I think is really important, and I think he's coming into a really tough position. That said, they're gonna be running a system that will lighten the load on him. It's a very simple structure with like very clear rules, which I think suits him as well. Because a lot of the times when the picture changes or it's not a maybe half field read, it's like it's requiring him to read stuff out over a full field, or like, you know, he gets a different look, which I think the Rams thing was he didn't expect that type of tight coverage to play out, and he didn't expect that second level guy to come, and suddenly it all did, and it's like, oh gosh, what am I doing now? When it's kind of clearly structured, which by the way, running the ball is going to get you more predictable looks if you can run the ball effectively. Then I think he's good, but it's when it changes, it's a bit alarming. But yeah, the way he throws the ball as well, his highlight tape, it's such an exciting highlight tape where he just rips digs. He throws it so fast and it's such a quick release. And I know, like, just seeing him hook up with Jefferson and Addison and on those like deep balls in the intermediate areas of the field was like so exciting. Like, I did a few of their games last year, and yeah, it was special. So who knows? But there's something to keep an eye on. And I think, as I said, that appetite for change in Seattle, or something like tangible to change, I think fans are looking forward to it. At the same time, it could very quickly become a case of, oh my gosh, what have you done here? And as I said at the start, I was an advocate of Geno Smith, and I do find it tricky. Like, I believe Geno Smith's a better quarterback than Sam Darnold, and I believe he has the ability to survive terrible offenses, and then elevate more around the stuff around him. And he would have fit Kubiak stuff, but you could have done more with him as well, in my opinion. But we'll see how he gets on in Las Vegas.
Yeah, the Geno thing is interesting to follow people talking about it, because there's sort of it's like people who watch a lot of film, which Seahawks on tape, you watch a lot of film.
Right.
They always come away really liking Geno Smith. There's a little bit of like, for me, I do both, right? I watch the film from every Vikings game, but I'm also there and covering it. And last year, I think, was really a Geno Smith in a bubble against the Vikings, or, you know, just summarized against the Vikings, where he made 5 throws in that game where I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the throw that Geno Smith just made. His arm talent was through the roof, but the decision making would really vary, where, I mean, even at the end of the game, the interception he throws is just mind blowing. Like, how does this even happen? And there were a couple throws in that game where you just, oh, what is going on there? And in the red zone, kind of freaks out a little bit and makes bad decisions and throws red zone picks. And you just, like, there's a lot of that actually with Sam Darnold, the same kind of thing. Where you're like the red zone interceptions that he threw against Jacksonville. And sometimes you just, why did you do that? There's an interception, and I know I kind of blamed Kevin O'Connell for calling this play because he should have known who his quarterback was, but there's an interception he throws against the Packers where the Vikings are up, I think, 14 points or 17 points. It should be an easy, even if you kick a field goal, this game is over. And he throws one up for grabs, a jump ball to the running back 20 yards down the field. And you're like, Jefferson's coming across the middle of the field on a check down wide open. Why did you do that? So I think that what both of these quarterbacks have in common is that there's a volatility element to them that drives everybody crazy and also creates a lot of debates for people, because you know, so you could watch Sam Darnold last year and say he was terrific, or you could point out a bunch of different times, even in a 14-win season, where he was very frustrating and he did throw bad interceptions and take huge sacks. There's a big sack against the Rams, not in the playoff game, but on Thursday Night Football, that kind of takes them out of a drive that they really needed. And like, there it goes again. The quick pressures are going to be a huge problem for Sam Darnold, because I think one of his Achilles heels is that he loves to just hang in, Like, I'm going to be that tough linebacker quarterback. I'm just going to hang in. Geno does this to some extent too, but I think Darnold's kind of to an extreme. I'm going to let this entire progression play out, and I'm going to wait on that long throw, which could also mean you get killed if you're getting quick pressure or if you're getting pressure from the second level. And that Rams game plan, a lot of it was, I think they knew every time the Vikings lined up in a bunch formation that they would run play action if it was on early downs, and they just sent corners off the edge, which is kind of the solution to that. So there's very clearly defined strengths and weaknesses to Sam Darnold, which I think makes it easy to predict in some ways, like what it's going to look like. But then everything else is just what's around him and what happens, which I guess is a question that needs to be asked as well. Is like, is this defense for Seattle good? They looked okay against the Vikings at times. I mean, because I think that was a huge factor too, that when we talk about Darnold going 14-3 and throwing 35 touchdowns, is they also had a top 5 defense that led the NFL in turnovers. It's a lot easier to throw 35 touchdowns when you get 20 something extra possessions or whatever it was from turnovers, 30 extra possessions.
Yep. They finished the season like a top 10 defense, really, like by most metrics. And they haven't really lost anyone of note. And they've got some ascending young players, and they've added to that in the draft. So defense is inherently streaky, and there's areas it can regress. You can improve in certain areas and then regress in others, and it kind of cancels each other out. There's obviously a bit of luck involved as well. The big thing last season, I can't remember if they'd acquired Ernest Jones. They must have done. I think they'd acquired Ernest Jones at linebacker and got rid of Tyrell Dodson, who they had signed as a free agent to be their Mike. And they'd kind of shuffled that around. The cohesion between the back end and the front improved. They kind of got out of some bad looking run defense type stuff, and it all kind of came together. They got better at stopping the run. That created more clear passing downs, which is where Mike McDonald makes his money. Like, he's so good in clear passing downs at scheming up pressure with just 4 rushers and playing enough good coverage to force the check down, which in that Vikings game, I thought on third down, like, he kind of played 3 high safeties and Darnold was checking the ball down quite a bit, and until he absolutely zoomed it over the head for that touchdown. So I think the defense is good. Like, the clear strength of it is the pass rush. They're so deep there. Like, they have there's not really like a star edge. I think Leonard Williams should be a star. I mean, he's NFL's 99th ranked player, so he's a top 100 player. I think he should be higher than that. A defensive tackle. Edge-wise, Boye Mafe is someone to keep an eye out for. He's in his 4th year. Yeah, and I think it's a contract year, so he's going to be balling out, but he's still quite young and so dynamic coming off the edge. Derek Hall's kind of ascending. He's entering his 3rd year of football. And they're deep. Like, they signed DeMarcus Lawrence to give him kind of a bigger edge type. But you're talking about like a edge 4 for them, edge 3 for them, and he can play some inside as well. Jaron Reed's like a wily vet, and then of course Byron Murphy, their first round pick last season. His snaps were kind of limited, but this is the year they'll be looking for him to take Reed's job and kind of rush the passer and be that kind of. He's not going to be this, but that lighter body defensive tackle pass rusher, kind of like Aaron Donald, but he's in that mold. So the defense is good, but they have some question marks in. As I've said, defense can regress. I think corner's a bit weird because there's a guy called Jackson Jobe who kind of emerged as the guy. They were like, okay, you're now our starter. I think they acquired him late into, like, I think they just picked him up off the street very late in the offseason. He had familiarity with Baltimore, but he's an undersized guy, and he's scrappy, his technique's good, but he's an undersized guy, so you kind of have to help him sometimes in coverage. You kind of have to accept that he might get picked on a bit at times. And then on the other side, Reek Woolen, there's some questions over like whether he fits in the culture, and he got benched again, and his tackling's iffy, but at the same time, he can erase a guy on the backside of trips or whatever. He can press a guy. He can take them out of a game. He's so big and so long and so fast and such a good press technique guy. So for him, it's more like a locked-in concentration deal. type dude. But the other question mark on the defense would be like linebacker still. Ernest Jones, he didn't sign for as much money as you'd think, and I think like there's some questions over his knee injury, like his knee stuff. Like if you there's pictures of it like basically spatted together with like lots of tape and it's like all just holding it in there, I guess. And his mobility kind of declined visibly throughout the season. He doesn't have like top range, but he's a really smart player, kind of an all-round linebacker, very solid player. But then Tyrese Knight in his second year, Will kind of had his struggles, and I think ultimately as well, McDonald's scheme wise, he focuses so much on how to stop like 3 wide receiver sets and all that type of stuff. Which, by the way, a lot of the NFL that's what they run, so fair enough. And he focuses so much on like passing downs, how to get pressure and whatnot. There were run defense issues that were corrected over the course of the season, but if you look at their numbers, like even going back to Baltimore, which my podcast co-host Griffin Sturgeon found, if you like the 12 personnel, the heavier personnel stuff, like 2 in the backfield, 21 personnel stuff, they really struggle against that, stopping it and the play action off that. Their numbers against it are just bad. So what I'm saying is, like, when the Vikings play the Seahawks, get into your multiple tight ends. Is CJ Ham still knocking around?
He is, but probably the better option is Josh Oliver, who is the PFF #1 run blocking tight end in the league. Yeah,
damn straight. Get Oliver and Hawkinson on the field. Maybe we'll get a bit of Ham involved as well because he's called Ham. And yeah, that type of stuff. And I was a bit disappointed that. I think it speaks to McDonald's skill because I've watched it happen a number of times now, and I'm like, oh, well, he must know something. But like teams like almost start passing, and when you're like, no, you could stay in your heavy personnel, grind it out, run the ball, play action off that type mode. Why are you suddenly like spreading it out and like relax? Like you're letting them play what they want to do, which is nickel, and he kind of catches them in that mode. But yeah. Get heavy, get in your base stuff. Look at the problem runs and action for this defense because there's 3 years of tape of it now, and I think I was banging on about it when we last recorded. So it's a thing.
I think offensive coordinators, including KOC, sometimes can't help themselves.
Yeah, they get so angsty.
Yeah, I was calling it last year in the press box, the 2 runs in a row challenge. Like, can they have? It doesn't matter if they get 7 on first down, it'll be a pass, and if they get 3 on first down, it will be a pass. It was really, and I think that it became a little too predictable for the Vikings when they ran. And I'm betting that McDonald looks around the league and says, teams, it's so funny how this works with like an analytical concept, because all of us were banging the drum years ago. Do not run on second down. If you run on second down, it's like an inefficient play and all this stuff. But then the defensive coordinators, they have ears and eyes too. Like okay, they're not going to run. And this is actually a Brian Flores thing where he's started treating second down and more than 5 like it's third down. Where you'll throw in lighter personnel, you'll send blitzes from all over the place because you're thinking, well, most of these offenses just run on first down and not on second down anymore unless it's like second down and 1. So I'm guessing that that's the concept. And it is really a big challenge for the Vikings this year to decide, like, are you going to load up a little bit more with Josh Oliver, with TJ Hawkinson, CJ Ham? Jordan Mason is now in the backfield, who I don't know if he played in the games against Seattle, but a beast, like a monster beast type of runner who kind of reminds you a little bit, not making the comparison, but a little of Marshawn Lynch with the violence. And I think he's kind of the same size, like a 5'11", 225 pounds, kind of has some quickness. Right. Yeah, exactly. I know we're looking at him in minicamp, be like, that's a man right there. That's a lot of beef, because Aaron Jones, is not a very big guy. No. So we're all kind of curious, and this just speaks to what a preview between us before the Seattle game will eventually be like. Like, will they stick with the run? Will they stick with some bigger personnel at times? Will they lean into that and then play action off of it with JJ McCarthy? Or is it just going to be the shotgun McCarthy show? And, oh, yeah, that's right, we have a running back who plays here, which has kind of been over the last 3 years. But let me not get too far down the road, because I want to ask you kind of like the bigger picture about Seattle. One of the things that happened to the Vikings for a long time and drove Vikings fans insane was that they got stuck in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And when they launched the competitive rebuild, I will tell you the truth. I was a skeptical podcaster of the competitive rebuild because I thought if you're not going to go all in to the rebuild and you're just going to try to stay competitive, it's very hard to get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're all being very honest with ourselves, an Achilles injury really helped them along to get there because
Mm-hmm.
had Kirk Cousins got them into the 2023 playoffs, what were they doing at that quarterback position? Are they trading up for Bo Nix or something? Like if they were drafting 21st, they don't get their hands on anybody. So anyway, just kind of reliving that history a little bit here, that now the Vikings have gone through a competitive rebuild, gotten to the point with the rookie quarterback contract. They've spent the money in free agency. I feel like Seattle in the post Russell Wilson world has really been similar to the Vikings in the Kirk Cousins world, where it was just reshuffling the deck chairs all the time. It's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same idea. And it's going to take a lot of things going right in order for Seattle to win that division. Not that they won't be good and not that they won't win games. They will. But is anyone walking into this season saying, oh man, Seattle, like they're the team this year? Probably not. How do
Mm-hmm.
they, I mean, if you agree with that statement, how do they get out of that? Like, how do they escape that?
Well, I strongly agree with that. And I think, like, you can get into Schneider, like, not keeping certain players, like why wouldn't you keep Damian Lewis? Okay, he got paid a ton in Carolina, but if you're serious about, it wouldn't have been that much probably. If you'd been serious about wanting to keep him, you maybe could have got a bit less. And now you just have to draft a guard in the first round because guess what? Like a guard who gets paid that much in free agency, maybe he's not an elite guard, but he's a good guard. Like you could have just kept him, and it's definitely a sensation before what happened this offseason. If they take one step forward, two steps back, and it's very static, and they're shuffling chairs, as you said. But the thing is, the expectation in Seattle now, I think it was already like, hey, we're tired of not making the playoffs, and we've won 10 games last season. We're very unlucky not to make the playoffs. If you look at 17-game season, but if you look at the history, it's never happened before. I don't think that a 10 team, maybe once, but a 10-win team not making the playoffs. Anyway, they feel a bit unlucky, and there's excitement because it's signs of it's not a rebuild, but there's a young quarterback now. There's a younger team. There's his head coach. But also, after Schneider picked Zabel in the first round, you'd be forgiven for thinking, oh, he's going safe. Like, he feels a bit of pressure. In day two of the draft, he, like, absolutely swung. Like, Nick Emanwari, they had a lot of picks, and they traded two of them to move up ahead of the Raiders and get, like, this nickel back, maybe a big nickel as, like, an answer, in theory, to their heavy run defense problems, potentially. Then they go and get Elijah Arroyo, who's a tight end, as I've said, who's coming off like a bad knee injury, may have been a medical red flag for teams. And he's like a move tight end, so it's like, well, can he block? Like, how does he fit in? Like, he's a great athlete, amazing catcher, very fluid route runner, but can he actually play NFL tight end? What's year one going to look like? And then they go get Milrow, who's like a project, but these are all like high ceiling guys, but it's the day one fit is kind of like, ooh, that's some coaching that's going to be going on. And so Schneider clearly feels a bit secure that he could do that. He clearly wasn't feeling the heat too much. The coaching staff clearly feels confident. But like fan expectation wise, I think it's excitement for the future. But it's like year one, the team looks worse, like objectively. But at the same time, there's this weird expectation of, well, 10 wins, 10 wins, like, can we make the playoffs now? Like, and it's a spoiled fan base because there's been so much success, so much playoff stuff. But Schneider certainly is not thinking, hey, we're just like treading water here. But at the same time, not to get to conspiracy theory of this, but I think it's worth mentioning, like the Allen estate, the Paul Allen estate, who and the Vulcan Group, who owns the team. They, at some point, right, and this is hanging over the team, at some point, it was Paul Allen's wish that the team is sold, right? The last year, late last year at some point, it was announced that the Portland Trail Blazers, also owned by the same group, are being prepared for sale, the basketball franchise. So it's kind of this thing of like, Well, at what point is ownership going to sell the Seahawks? And then with some of the again, it would be. I think it's unfair not to have it in your mind at least. Well, why? And not to do too much speculation, but why would they not offer certain contracts? And is there like a money thing going on? That it could be completely wrong. But the fact is they've got rid of like players who I think would have been worth keeping around, and they're getting younger, and it's like and there's not many guarantees after a certain year of money, and like cash flow wise, it'd be an interesting study from someone who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to this. But to all of that said, like the expectation is for them to make the playoffs and win the division in a division that is very weird because I mean, what do you think of the NFC West? Because if you look at it, you're like, well, they used to be good, and he was quite good once upon a time, and is he still good? And oh, that coach is good, or is he good? And then oh, the Cardinals real, or they just like they didn't actually win that many games again. And then with the Seahawks, is like what on like because like if the defense, if it's like a top 10 unit for the whole season, would be amazing. But I really can't see the offense being. It'll be better, but I don't think it'll be good enough to. Like, I think 10 wins would be an achievement.
I think so too. Yeah. And to your point about the division, I was thinking about this myself because I do an article of 50 predictions going into the season. And it's actually harder than you'd think to come up with 50. So I'm going, diving into the different players and divisions and stuff like that. And when I get to the NFC West and I'm looking at it like, okay, so Arizona probably just wins 8 games again because Kyler Murray is their quarterback, and they're going to have to prove to me that they're better than that. I actually really like Jonathan Gannon as a defensive mind, and
Yep.
I think that their defensive line improving is significant, but I am not the Marvin Harrison Jr. believer that a lot of the draft people were. I think that living on contested catches and fade balls in the year 2025 is a pretty tough place to be. I think that him being not fast does matter. And they seem to want to make him into a deep wide receiver, but I think you have to do that with everybody with Kyler Murray. There was the Cliff Kingsbury chart of DeAndre Hopkins, how it was like all the heat map was just on one side and it was
Yep.
all short and to the
Yep.
outside. I don't think that Kyler Murray can see the middle of the field. And,
No.
the Vikings have played him numerous times and I've seen him, live enough to think I think that height thing does matter. And it ultimately mattered with Russell Wilson when everyone was saying, let Russ cook, just let him throw every play. And it's like, that doesn't really work that way if
Yep.
you're not able to see the middle of the field. And so with Kyler Murray, it's a lot of the same stuff we were talking about with Darnold, where it's like, it's got to be down the field or it's got to be a screen or it's got to be a scramble. And if you're asking someone week after week over 17 games to scramble around, make crazy plays, throw fade balls, it's just, that doesn't work on a week-to-week basis consistently. It's more like one game you go, oh my God, Kyler Murray was the best quarterback in the league this week, and then the worst the following week. So I don't trust that team to be above 500. I wonder about where Matthew Stafford is physically at this point in his career. I mean, this guy has just had so many injuries, is so
Yep.
banged up, and he was great against the Vikings in both games last season. But you just do wonder, is there a fall off? There was at points last year, but the Rams still should be pretty darn good. They got Devontae Adams to go along with Puka Nacua if he can even play a little. I think they should still win the division, the Rams. And then the rest, I mean, San Francisco, I just don't understand. Isn't it crazy, Maddie, how fast you can go from the genius team to the stupid team? Because
Have
2
you seen
years
their
ago,
draft history? Like their draft history is
right,
amazing.
right.
It's
I
very
mean,
similar to like how the Seahawks were drafting when they were cooking.
I know it's well, and one thing is you win a lot, it
Yep.
becomes a lot harder. But even this year for San Francisco's draft, I was like, another nose tackle. Huh? I'm like, okay, well, I guess
Yeah.
that's something
Did
you
they
could
take
do.
a specialist again?
Did they? Oh yeah, that's right. Didn't they draft? Was it Jake Moody? Was the guy's name that they took in like the 4th round or something?
Yep.
Their draft history is strange, and they've let so much talent go out the door. Brock Purdy is, I think, a really good quarterback, but not an elevator. So you end up with like, what do you really have there in San Francisco?
Yep.
And it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, I mean, I think it's kind of up for grabs to whoever
I
wins
do.
10 or 11 games, unless the Rams, that D line is so disgusting that they may win a lot of games because of that. So
Yeah, and
I would pick the Rams right now.
and I like what I always blank on his name, but I like what their defense coordinator does. Like, I
Mhm.
like just watching how he game planned for teams. What's crazy is like Seahawks fans will be screaming like, "Well, McDonald kind of did really well against McVay, and not so good against the Cardinals, who used a lot of 13 personnel and tight end catching the ball over the middle, maybe a formula, but." Yeah, he did really well against McVay and Shanahan, like this kind of McDonald's thing. So surprisingly, given what I've said about heavy run game and how the Rams are getting heavier and running gap concepts, and how Shanahan obviously runs like from like two back stuff. So yeah, I mean maybe it's like the 2010 NFC West where the Seahawks went 7-9, win the division, and go and beat some washed old quarterback. Well, Drew Brees wasn't washed then.
No.
Let's not be unfair, but
No, that was a Marshawn Lynch run that
yeah.
was responsible
Let
for that.
Absolutely, and so yeah, let's have a Beastquake moment, and maybe then that is the launch point for a young Seahawks team with Mike McDonald as a young coach in Seattle, and then the rest is history. Who knows? But yeah, I think that I kind of settled on the division being bad, but then it wouldn't surprise me if one of the teams decided, oh, not the Seahawks though. It wouldn't surprise me if like the Rams were like, oh, well, no, we're good. Like
Mhm.
we have, if that tight end pick from Oregon hits, blanking on his name, and Stafford is just like has a Stafford year, it's like his last dance, and he's just shredding balls, and Puka Nakua stays healthy, like suddenly McVay's cooking. You can kind of see that.
They're the one that has enough talent to actually be that team.
Yeah.
I do want to get your opinion on the Vikings and their decision, because you would not have Seahawks on tape watching Sam Darnold without the Vikings deciding to move on from Sam
Yeah.
Darnold. So going to JJ McCarthy, there's, I guess, one line of thinking that would say that it is a bold decision to move on from a quarterback who played so well with a roster that is starting to be in win now mode, which is not to be mistaken with Super Bowl or bust mode, Maddie. Those are two different modes. Like being in a win now means you're starting a window, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
that you have to win this year or you're fired, just to clarify that for everybody. But this decision is really based on a training camp, an OTAs, a mini camp that they saw last year, how they vibed with him from coach and quarterback, what his teammates thought of him, and not much else, because he didn't throw a lot of passes at Michigan and he hasn't thrown a lot of passes in the NFL. Now, having seen those practices, I get it. I get it, because
Mm-hmm.
his arm has looked more live than I think any of us really expected coming out of Michigan, where there were criticisms of his arm talent. I think that he's got all the arm, and this is having seen him throw in the same practices with Sam Darnold. So if you can hang in those, that means you've got some arm talent,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he's got the mind for it to play professional quarterback. I think he was doing a lot of that already in college, and he's shown signs of really, I think, latching on quite well to the professional quarterback type of role. But nonetheless, so the two lines of thinking are either that it's really bold because he's never played, or that it's not bold at all because this was always the way that they were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just sticking to their plan. I guess, which one of those do you kind of subscribe to?
I mean, yeah, I think it's just they had to wait the Darnold thing in some respects, right? They had to recognize that, hey, this had happened, but there's nothing wrong with like what I think how they've approached it and how they're trusting their evaluation and what they've seen and stuff that you won't have seen either, even though you're at practices and stuff and you've seen much more than like 99% of people. But it I admire it because I think it's commendable and it's that whole theory of, hey, everything's there for the quarterback to succeed, so let's have our young quarterback succeed. Like, it's going to be a fascinating experiment, like having no vested interest in this. It's going to be really interesting to see, like, hey, how much does this help a young passer having everything around him? And I think as well, not only the pieces and the talent, but that system, like it looked very like Darnold catered, obviously because he was the quarterback. But how that gets adjusted for McCarthy and how they do they lean more run game early, or if he's struggling? Like, I believe O'Connell can do stuff like that, and I believe that he can really adjust and be quarterback friendly. So, and I think you just couldn't, like, does paying Darnold win you a Super Bowl? And there, with all those pieces, with everything I've said, and I think ultimately the truth is no. And so they've decided not to do it, and that's probably what they thought as well. And that's why the Seattle thing is also like, well, if paying, I believe Geno Smith could win a Super Bowl, right? And I don't think Darnold could. But he'd have to have everything around him, and we kind of saw that in Minnesota. Now his left tackle did get hurt, and you have a bad game occasionally. But like, how much better was it going to get with Darnold in Minnesota year 2?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, that's an interesting question, because if they could have given him the offensive line that they've given McCarthy now in the middle and get Darisaw back, at the same time, it's hard to spend all the money if you are paying, or if you had to franchise tag him. Because I think that Sam Darnold was leaving no matter what. Like, if he had a chance to leave, he was going to leave, because he knew McCarthy was behind him. So you'd have to franchise tag him, and that means $41 million, just a big anchor on that cap, which maybe they could have done some of the stuff, but they definitely couldn't have done all of it. I still think that they would have improved it on the offensive line from where they were last year. And the Darisaw thing was devastating ultimately as they went down the stretch. But the other thing is that, we talk about those pressure numbers where he had so many big plays under pressure. You and I both know those are not sustainable.
Same with the interception stuff, right? Like, he had it's like Geno was on the opposite end of it. Geno had, like, I think 79% of his turnover-worthy plays per PFF were intercepted, whereas the year before he'd got maybe a bit lucky from that.
Yep.
Darnold's kind of, and again, like, we come back to it, like, what if this is the year that Darnold that regresses, like, those two things regress? Like, oh gosh.
Right, exactly.
And they could, because the receivers are worse. The O-line's probably going to be worse. I realize
it's hard to say the coaching is going to be better, right? Like,
I don't hate Kubiak at all. I'm quite excited to see what it looks like. But as I've said, O'Connell, I think, is one of the best play callers in the league. Kubiak's not there yet, and if he is, he'll be a head coach. So.
Right, you're right. If the Seahawks win the division, then he's going to have a great chance at that.
Yeah.
I think that the most normal outcome is the one that will happen, or the most probably median outcome, which is a 9-8 season where Darnold gives you some thrills and doesn't quite get you over the top. But what you said, the word Super Bowl, I think when Kwesi Adofo-Mensah got here as the general manager, he laid out a plan. This is how I think we could get to the Super Bowl, and hell or high water, we're going to follow this plan, and we're going to go there, and we're going to take a swing at it, because bringing back Darnold probably would have been settling for less than that. I think you can compete for it with all the weapons they have, but can you create a Philadelphia? Can you create a San Francisco from the Garoppolo or early Purdy era with Darnold? It's a lot harder to do in a salary cap universe. So they are taking their big swing, and that means that it's an experiment we haven't seen too often, right? I guess you could say, like, Philadelphia was in the right spot to move on from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts, so there's that. Or Garoppolo got hurt to go to Brock Purdy. They were kind of forced into it. The Vikings are willingly choosing to just straight up move on from a quarterback that played that good. You can't find too many historical examples, which should be interesting. And it will also be interesting to see what both teams are like when they play each other deep into the season. So what a preview this was, Matt. It's July 1st, we're recording this, and I feel like I want to play this game tomorrow. So I really appreciate your time. You are the best breaking down the Seattle Seahawks. I love having you on the show. I know that our audience, I know you mentioned it's because you picked the Vikings, but that wasn't the only reason. Your in-depth breakdowns are really, really excellent of this team. So I'm looking forward to the next time we get together when these two teams are going to play each other. So I really appreciate your time, dude.
Well, likewise, and not just saying this, but like watching Brian Flores' defense, like that's always fun for me. So, and what the offense does. So yeah, it'll be a good matchup, and yeah, hopefully we can get some heavy type formations against McDonald's defense. See what happens there. Yeah.
There you go. Going on a Vikings podcast and revealing all of the secrets of the Seattle defense. And but your film breakdowns would reveal that anyway on Seahawks on tape. But so thanks again. And when we see each other again, we'll do like position by position. We'll go full hardcore. This was
Hell
bigger
yeah.
picture. So all right.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing, man. We'll talk again soon. And thanks everybody for listening.